on your cameras, please do that. Breanne is joining us all the way from Trinidad and Tobago. Yay!
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hi, Breanne. Welcome to the Ottawa Black Book Club. Some days we are more than this, some days we are fewer. Some are sick, so they can't be here today. But welcome. This is the Ottawa Black Book Club. We believe in promoting and shaping our Black narrative, one book at a time. So welcome. So everybody, you already read Breanne's bio. So we have just 1 hour with her. And I want to maximize the 1 hour. So we have people here from Nigeria. Some are from Canada here. Yes, so Ottawa. Onome, where are you? Toronto? And then we have...
Yes, I'm in Toronto.
Toronto, okay. I keep saying Toronto. Then Hemilyn is in Montreal. Then Camille is in British Columbia. So I and Laide are in Ottawa. So welcome. So before I ask you for your inspiration for this book, Obadiah. Okay. So please, first of all, tell us about you and what inspired you to write this book.
Sure. So hello again, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. I think that the inspiration from this book came from lots of different places, but the thing that really gave me the tools to write this was working as a professional makeup artist myself. And when I did my makeup training, I was somebody who just had, like a lay person's interest in beauty, like you watch a YouTube videos on how to do whatever. And I was actually very involved in theater. And it was just, being a director at school plays, I was a teacher, and twice the makeup artist canceled, once on the day of the production. And my parents said to me, they're like, look, for your birthday, why don't we pay for you to do like a makeup course? And then you can do the makeup yourself if you have to. And I just thought, yeah, how hard could it be? So I signed up and I went in thinking, okay, this is just going to be a course about how to put on makeup. No, it was months long. You had to write essays, give presentations. You were judged on your own appearance every day. It was all about branding. So a lot of the things that like Radhika says in the book, that came from things that I was taught. You were taught things like never have an off day, like not even one day. You can't go just to the mall in a t-shirt and your slippers. That can be the day somebody sees you and they decide they're not going to get their makeup done by someone who looks that bad. And so it was this really intense experience. And for about 6 months after the course, I bought into that 100%. I was the person, you can't just tell me we're going out now. I need an hour's notice because I have to do my face to go out. And the experience of how differently I was treated in that period of time was shocking. There was a cafe I always used to go to, like multiple times a week. I went in before I did the makeup course and I would write. And every time I placed my order and they called me up to the counter to collect it, the first time I went, sort of all done up, placed my order, and then she brings it to the table on a tray, puts everything out, the sugar, the milk. And I'm just like, wait. And I had so many visions of that experience. So it really got me thinking about, the way that beauty and how you present yourself affects how people perceive you, how people treat you. And I guess all of that was just knocking around in my head until it was time to write this book.
Because this is the first book I have read that I like your take on makeup. I like how you were able to infuse makeup into the storytelling, at the same time touching on gender disparity, a bit of colonization, a bit of history, a bit of privilege. I like the way you were able to do that. Because in the beginning, when I was reading it, I couldn't really tell what Bianca looked like. All I just know was that you wrote here that her father's name, Eric Chan Kit. So I went, okay, so there's Chinese there. And then I think her great grandfather came in, when you're talking about her dad, came to Trinidad on the ship. So I had mentioned earlier to the club members that it's so interesting how a lot of us Africans don't know about the Caribbean. It's amazing. I don't know why. All the blacks in the Caribbean were taken from Africa, the African continent. But it's interesting how we don't really know much about each other. Like, I was very surprised. I know we had Indians as indentured, who were taken as indentured servants to work on the sugarcane plantations. But the Chinese, I'm a bit iffy about that because I wasn't too sure. I was like, so what did they go there to do? Did they go there as indentured servants? I didn't have time to do my research. Did they go there as business people? So talk to us about that. And is this you?
No, no.
Okay.
I've been asked a few times, though. I think
really?
it never occurred to me when we were doing the cover, but there were a few times people like, is that you on the cover? And I've just been like, no.
Yeah. Because I'm just looking at it now and I'm like, huh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, I think that it's really interesting what you were saying, because a lot of Afro-Caribbean people, or people who are mixed race but who have African heritage, often think of Africa as a sort of motherland. If you listen to the music of a lot of Caribbean people, somebody like Buju Banton, who's singing about, going back to Ethiopia, and there have been movements in the Caribbean of people saying they want to go back to Africa. But I'm not sure how much knowledge there is about what that means when you want to say you want to go back to Africa. I mean, Africa is massive, and there have been so many generations of Black Caribbean people living in the Caribbean that I think that sometimes it's a shock when people do make that trip to Africa and they realize that, yeah, what you had, your vision of Africa is this sort of like idealized place where maybe there's less racial inequality. But then you go there and you realize, just like everywhere else, you're going to encounter maybe not all the same problems you had at home, but you're going to encounter different problems. And to what you said about the sort of Chinese immigration, I think that, so I grew up and I lived my whole life in Trinidad, and it was only when I went to university, like when I studied in the UK, did I really think about what I would look like versus, I guess, somebody's perception of a Caribbean person. So when I was living in the UK, you would hear a lot of people say things like, oh, you don't look like you're from the Caribbean, or you don't talk like you're from the Caribbean. And by that, they meant I don't have a Jamaican accent, because that has been like the sort of gold star of Caribbean accents. And I am mixed race with many, many different things. And people would say things like, well, what do you identify as? And that was the first time I ever got asked that question. It's not a question anyone asks in Trinidad. And I said, well, I don't identify as any one thing. I am, like, my heritage is like Black, Indian, Chinese, Carib. That's our first peoples, English, Spanish, Scottish. Like, I've always known that I'm mixed, and particularly in Trinidad, you're made very aware that you're not white. But in terms of like, what do I identify as? I found that question very hard. I'd never associated with any one group. And my dad is partly the inspiration for Dominic Chankit. His grandfather came to Trinidad from China, and I actually knew very little about it. He wasn't a big talker, and it was really being asked these questions when people say, oh, you're part Chinese, are there a lot of Chinese people in the Caribbean? Like, tell us about it. And I was just like, I probably don't know that much more than you. So I started asking my dad what his experiences were like. I'm really happy I did because he has just last year he started suffering from dementia. So I'm really happy that I was able to talk to him before that happened. And yeah, so a lot of the Chinese, so basically when slavery ended in the Caribbean, the problem that all the planters had was they wanted labor. Obviously, if you've been a slave your whole life, you don't want to stay and work on a plantation.
Nope.
So the slaves, the ex-slaves, they left, they went to the towns. That's still the way it is in Trinidad. A lot of the urban centers, that's where you find a lot of Afro-Caribbean people. So they're like, we're going to get out of here. And the planters tried bringing different types of people to work in the Caribbean. So we had a large Portuguese immigration because poor Portuguese people, they were like, come and see. We had people from, I think, like small numbers of poor Scottish people who came, and then they were given better positions because they were white. And one other experiment was we had a lot of Chinese people come. And you know that like the whole idea of the plantations is just so fundamentally racist. So the Chinese people came, they didn't like the work, and they were like, oh, well, it's because, you know, they're too weak. We need to get somebody, you know, people who are stronger. And then that's when we had a huge Trinidad and Guyana in particular Indian influx. And a lot of those Chinese people who came, they ended up doing very much like what Dominic Chankit's father or grandfather did. They opened shops, they, you know, opened laundries. They basically went very, very quickly into the service industry. They didn't stay on the plantations for a long time. And I think that, you know, I heard a bit about, you know, the experience that my dad had, his father, his grandfather, and that fed into the book and the Chinese side of Bianca's family.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think for me, anytime I read a book set in the Caribbean, one thing that always gets to me are the English names. I'm always asking, where are the original names? What are their original names? Because as Africans, we are big on names. Because we feel that if I call you, when I give you a name and you name a child, and every time you call that child's name, you speak the meaning of the name into that child's life. So, but when we are born and we are baptized, we're baptized with English names. We're always giving, like for us, I'm Catholic. So my first name is Onolunosen, the one who has done well. So every time I'm called Olunosen, that is spoken into my life. I only have Louisa because at baptism, I was baptized as Louisa. And the only reason I use it is because one, it's easy to pronounce, and two, the meaning. Yes, it's an old name. Yeah. So I'm always amazed as in, why do they have such, like anglicized name? Then I remember the history. But yeah, but I want to go back to the book. First of all, when I was reading the story, this could have happened in Nigeria. It's so amazing how similar we are, despite passage of time, the years. But like they say, the body remembers. First of all, body image for Obadiah to ask her what she weighs. And then for me, there was humor in the book because as I went on reading, and I looked at him, so I started by hating him. Let me just use that word. I hated him in the beginning, and I'm like, who is this man? Like, what is this? And then when I got reading and found out his background, I started to laugh. I said, oh, so this is a mask. So it's like saying, let me hide my insecurities behind this mask. So talk to us about the beauty industry, the Trinidad. So people from Trinidad, what are they called? Trinis or Trinidadians? What are they called?
Both. Trinis is like the informal term. That's what I would call myself. But like if you hear like in the news, they'll say Trinidadians.
Okay. So talk to us about, Bianca, the character of Bianca and the beauty industry. So everybody, once she's done with this, I'll open up the floor for people to ask questions. So talk to us about the beauty industry, because I know from reading about you, you were a makeup artist at one time and you've mentioned it too. So talk to us about the beauty industry and the craziness.
So I think the thing about working in the beauty industry and the thing that got to me is I still love makeup. Like I love doing makeup, but working in the industry, there are times when you think, what am I really doing here? Like, what am I doing as a job? I have done makeup where somebody, and people tell you why. She's going to a concert and her ex-boyfriend is the guitarist and she wants revenge makeup. She wants him to see her in the audience and just think, damn, I made a mistake, and or there are times when, you're doing just face after face for certain things and you realize that everybody who comes to you, they have issues, they're insecure. You have people who will come and say, oh, like, can you make my nose slimmer? Can you make my cheekbones higher? And a lot of the times you realize that what people are insecure about, what people are aspiring towards is this very narrow, very Eurocentric form of beauty. People have this idea of how you're supposed to look, and everybody is going towards that version. And I think that in the book, I wanted to explore some of those questions because Bianca, she works as a model. That's something I have very limited experience with, not nearly as much as her, but she basically works in an industry where there's all of this scrutiny on her face and on her body. And people think that that gives them the right to treat her however they want, whether that's touching her like Lincoln does, whether that's making comments about the way she looks, and they enforce a certain standard. So she's rewarded by, compliments, by people's behavior, by better treatment when she looks a certain way. But when I explored it, I didn't want it to be something as simple as, well, don't wear makeup. Just the beauty industry is bad, forget about it. Because I think that there is so much power in wearing makeup if you're wearing makeup for the right reasons, not to look like someone else, but to best express who you are. And the reason that there's a lot of carnival in the book is that in Trinidad, carnival started out as something that people did on the slave plantations to resist slavery. So there were very strict rules, and the planters, they would have these very fancy balls. Although they're in the Caribbean, they're in the heat, they would have the fans and the dresses, and slaves started having balls to mock the planters and dressing up to imitate them. A lot of this sort of music was the music that they could make with what they had, but carnival has its roots in rebellion, in reclaiming a vision of your humanity. And that involved dressing up. It involved this sort of celebratory costumes and hair and makeup. And so I wanted to also show that side of things in the beauty industry. I wanted to show it's not, yes, there is that really negative side, but there is also the side of celebration. And I think that that's something that Bianca tries to navigate throughout the book. What is her relationship to beauty and her relationship to herself? Because if you think, okay, I can't leave the house without a full face of makeup, then why do you think that? What do you feel about yourself that leads you to think that?
It's interesting how makeup has evolved. If I remember as a child, there used to be this, when my mom would make up, there used to be this thing we used to call hot slap. And I think now it's called, why have I forgot? Blush. That's what it's called now, blush. But we used to call it hot slap in the 80s then, because, it's like saying when a slap is left on your face, it's reddish. But I remember then, my mom would make up, and that thing, she would always have it, on her face. And even this morning, I was just saying, you know what? We're talking about makeup. I need to do red lips. But I think I've come to terms with the fact that it's not in my destiny to know how to draw my brows. And I think, I just said, you know what? Either I'm going to get the brows tattooed or I'm going to get them microbladed. It's interesting how there was a time when in the 80s, you would just apply your foundation and you go out. And then the 90s or in the 2000s, contouring came out. We started talking about contouring. And people, I have a big nose. So now you want to contour my nose to look Eurocentric. There was a time you wanted thinner lips. But now everybody wants, I walk into shops and sometimes I'm laughing because you have people, when you line your lips, back in the day, the lips, I used to be told that my lips are too thick. So line the inside so it looks thinner. But now people are lining outside their lips to give an illusion of fullness. I have been on the train many times because I love my go-to colors are red, pink. I only started doing it recently. And I've been approached by white women on the train to say, I love your lips. And I'm like, what's in the lips? I don't get it. And someone went as far as telling me, your lips are well shaped. Even your Cupid's bow is emphasized. And I'm like, Cupid's bow. And I went, my Cupid's bow. Oh, this. And then I realized, okay, so that's why makeup artists actually take it upon themselves to use the pencil to do this. Then you highlight the top. So, and then you put a bit of shimmer. So it looks as if you actually have a Cupid's bow. So how makeup has evolved, through the years. And I don't know, maybe by the time we are no more, I don't know what makeup will look like anymore. What parts of our bodies and, our features we will try to emphasize, which I find very, very interesting. Does anybody have any questions? I can go on. Miss Hemilyn, do you have any questions? Breanne is here, so please feel free to ask her directly.
Well, I am from Grenada, Breanne. Hi. And I really enjoyed reading the book. It brought me back home. So as you know, we are neighbors. And I love the resilience and our strength. So I like the action of throwing the tea on Obadiah and all the crazy stuff that I enjoy. So thank you. And yeah.
Okay.
One of my best friends, who mom is Grenadian, and she was born in Trinidad, and they often have this little back and forth because she's such a Trini, and her mother has lived in Trinidad for almost 30 years now, and still just thinks of certain things as like, she's like, why do you Trinidadians do this? And
exactly.
But no, I love Grenada. It's so beautiful, and I'm so happy that there's that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we still have like I have aunts, uncles in Trinidad. So we always have the split family, like back and forth. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you. You did justice to the book. Somebody else can talk.
Okay. Esther, I saw your hand up. Esther is joining us from Nigeria.
Okay, what?
Yeah. Esther,
I'd like to ask
okay.
What's the significance of the flowers? Like I didn't get them. I was trying to imagine what they mean. I've never seen those kind of flowers. I don't know what they look like. Even when you were explaining them, I didn't know. Like, what did they mean in relation to the book? Is it because the book is just an aesthetic book? I don't know.
That's a great question. So I think that flowers have, I guess growing things have different significances to Bianca and Obadiah. So for Bianca, flowers and spices, anything that grows, it's a connection to her mother. And it's this thing that she always associates with her mother. Some of Bianca's best memories of her mother are of her mother gardening, etc. Obadiah, for him, flowers are part of his image. So Obadiah is somebody who has thought really hard about how he presents himself and how he presents his store. He knows that in order to succeed in an industry that's often patronized by members of the sort of like upper middle class and the upper class, he needs to convey a certain type of aesthetic. So he knew he needed to move out of the Betham and get a certain store location. And I think that with the flowers as well, for him, it's partly image. But then more than that, he uses the flowers to almost communicate when he can't say things that he wants to say. So especially in the beginning, Obadiah thinks that he has to behave in a particular way towards Bianca because he has to assert, look, I am not impressed by you. You don't impress me. I don't care about you. And he doesn't realize it, but he sort of boxes himself off into that corner where he may want to be nice later on, or he may want to be nicer, but he can't. And so he tries with the flowers, to put roses when he's trying to be a little bit nicer to her. Dante picks it up. Dante says to him, oh, we never had roses before Bianca was working here. So for Obadiah, the flowers are also a sort of a way for him to try and to communicate with Bianca. And then at the end, when he comes into her apartment, he's never really associated her with plants. He's the one who does the arrangements, and he's the one who waters the flowers. And one of the things he sees is that she has all of these plants everywhere, and that actually plants are significant to her too. So I think what I wanted the end, one of the things I wanted, hopefully, is to show that while definitely, things between them are much better than they were at the beginning, they still have so much to learn about one another. He has so much to learn about who she is really beneath the mask. I love picking up of the term of mask and masking in this chat, but she has to learn about him. So I think they mean different things to different characters. And some of it is just setting. I think that we have a lot of just homes where, people still have big gardens, where a lot of gardening is still quite popular. So something like Bianca's mom gardening is something that would be, I also think, just a very familiar image of, somebody taking care of their lawn, growing the different flowers, planting the fruit trees. That's something that I still do now. I have cantaloupe seeds outside, I'm hoping that they germinate into the vines. So I think it's also something that we do a lot. I hope that answers the question.
Well, talking about plants, I was saying this morning that, I got this and I needed it to show. Let me adjust. Yeah, I needed it to be in the background because I just felt, oh, it would give this pizzazz. But I mean, it's a fake plant. It's a fake plant. So I'm one of those people who which is strange, because growing up I loved planting stuff. As a child, I would plant stuff, I would water them. But I don't know, as an adult, through the years, I became paranoid about live plants because I grew up in the tropics. So I've learned to associate live plants with creepy crawlies, snakes, lizards, and all of that. The only time I saw a plant that I liked, the plant had thorns I don't know what it's called, but it looked like a tree, but it had thorns all over its body. And I said, oh, I love this plant because nothing can climb it. So yeah, so I'm paranoid like that. I don't stand under trees. I don't sit under trees. Nope. All those things where people say, oh, let me go relax under the shade. Louisa doesn't do that. No, because I just feel anything can fall on me. I've seen lizards fall from trees and stuff. So
And it will. Like, I mean, I live in the bush. I am like, if it rains, the frogs come down and there'll be little puddles of water and you just see their eyes peeking up. So it's true, the frogs, the lizards, sometimes you just sweep the frog out your house, it jumps in, and yeah.
Because our family house in Nigeria, my dad put what's it called? He put tiles in the compound, and then my mom created portions where you have plants and so on. And then there's a mango tree there. And then at the back, you have flowers. And one day I remember looking at and saying, I would love a day when I just wake up and there are tiles everywhere and no plants, which is weird. Yeah, because I need to be able to see everything. I don't like to guess what is, wonder what could be lurking in there. I want to be able to stand and see the whole backyard and say, okay, there are tiles here. If there's any lizard here or anything here, I can see it. I don't know how that phobia started. I don't know. Yeah. So I want to go to Bianca and slut shaming, which is very, very common which is very similar between because I'm comparing Nigeria now to Trinidad because the similarity is amazing. So everybody, and Esther had had mentioned that before, because Esther was saying she feels that Bianca didn't take didn't take responsibility for her actions. But from what Bianca said here, she said she didn't know Eric was married when she met him. And then I believe eventually when she found out he was married, it's still that fantasy of maybe this guy has treated me so well. You know how women are when it comes to matters of the heart. But so first of all, my thinking is Trinidad is a small place. It's not like Nigeria where we have how many billion people, and you know what, they make noise about you for 2 days and after that nobody cares, really. Nobody really cares. But this one now, she's almost a national, like she's almost a national joke. So what is it about slut shaming? Because I don't see people crucifying Eric the way everybody's condemning her. Really? I mean, it takes two to tango. To tango, right? So slut shaming, please talk to us about that.
Sure. I think that, like you said, in so many countries around the world, so much responsibility is placed on women to be pure and to be the ones to uphold certain standards. And a lot of times men's behavior is excused. Oh, it's just boys being boys, or, people, what do you expect him to do? And I think that it's something that we see here. One of the unexpected side effects of this book coming out is that people in Trinidad have come up to me and they've said, oh, I know who Eric is. It's not even always the same person. In fact, it's many different people. I've met somebody who said, I know about 5 different people who could be Eric. And it's so funny that I've had so many female readers come up to me and say, oh, Bianca is me. I've had Bianca's experience.
Okay.
And I think that, there's a situation where when somebody is vulnerable, like Bianca was, it's very easy to seek solace in the wrong places. So, like you said, she didn't know Eric was married at first. But when she finds out, she's in this gray area where she doesn't put an end to things. She continues because Eric is really the only person, who she feels actually cares about her or is interested in her. He's kind of like the only friend she has, and she reads so much into that relationship. And so, yes, I think Bianca is in this gray area where she knew he was married and she continued. But then when it becomes big news, she is the one who's blamed, despite the fact that Eric is older. He's the one who's married. He's obviously in a position of power. He has a lot more experience. And I think that that is just a reality of life in Trinidad. There have been real life ministers who have had scandals. They haven't lost their job. They haven't been voted out. There hasn't really been any sort of backlash towards them. It's just a sort of a shrug of, well, what can you do? And I did want to examine that because I think that all of us as women, sometimes it can feel really oppressive or unfair to be held to such a high standard. And when you just look at the way that men are treated, you just think, well, why? Why isn't it the same for him? Why don't people make the same kind of comments for him? And I think, to just jump on something else you said about Trinidad being a small place, yes, the whole population of Trinidad is, I think, 1.4 million people, but that is the entire country. And when the country is that small, sometimes there's a very high likelihood that, everybody is interested in these types of gossip because, oh, you might know somebody, or, oh, Bianca's Dominic Chankit's daughter, but that means something to all of these people. And so when somebody kind of gets put in the spotlight, even people who might feel justified, people who think, no, she's wrong, this tendency to just come down on somebody, the effect of being the butt of so many jokes, of being made into this sort of like national figure, of losing your job. I also wanted to look at, well, what does it mean to a person to have to go through that? Because most of us, thankfully, will never experience it. And you may just look from the outside and you may say, I mean, she did something wrong, but does the punishment fit the crime? Like how serious it is. And I think that it's something that I, even now, I've met a lot of readers and I've had very different responses. I've met people who have been 100% on Bianca's side and who have said that, like, Eric manipulated her from the beginning, like she was too young. I've met people who have said, yeah, okay, Eric certainly, in the beginning, especially with, trying to get her drunk, not being upfront being married, all of those things, those are wrong. But, you know, maybe when she found out, she could have done something differently. And I think that that is, to me, one of the most exciting things about being a writer, just hearing the way that different readers respond to characters, and who sometimes who's their favorite, who they didn't like, and it's varied so much. It's been really interesting to get that response from people as well.
Yeah, I found that really interesting, you know, with the way she was being slut shamed. And it's so interesting that when you look at the gender dynamics, even if she's being slut shamed, the men, you know, people, we usually, I say this many times because of what I have seen. You know, people say women are we as women, we are our problem. Because even if she's being slut shamed, yes, the man will feel, okay, oh, she's easy, but it doesn't mean they won't help her. But I remember reading somewhere where Eric's wife had something to do with, I think, did I get it right? Did Eric's wife have something to do with her being fired? Because I remember there was a point Eric's wife didn't want her somewhere. Yeah, and it's like this, it's as if the slut shaming was coming more from the women than even the men. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to look at, because Bianca herself, even she doesn't consider that Eric has done something wrong in the beginning. And she takes her anger and her frustration and she directs it at Eric's wife. And Eric's wife, in turn, appears towards the very end of the book. She doesn't really seem to think that Eric has done anything wrong. She takes her frustration and directs it at Bianca. And I think that in some instances, that's what can happen when, you know, both of them should really have been asking, yeah, but Eric, he is the real guilty party here. Like, if I had to do a list of, okay, who's the guiltiest, it's him. But they turn their focus on each other. They're sort of like crabs in a barrel mentality. We need to fight each other. And I think that for Bianca, she's able to go on this journey where she starts off hating Eric's wife. And by the end, when Eric's wife briefly appears, she realizes maybe what she can think a little bit from Eric's wife's perspective. And she says, you know, probably the same way that Eric has manipulated me and the same things that he's told me. I mean, he's probably done the same thing to his wife. He can't possibly be upfront with his wife about what he's actually doing. And then, so you see in Bianca a woman who has, you know, been able to think about things differently. And you see in Eric's wife a woman who probably is just going to stay with Eric and who isn't going to, you know, really analyze the situation beyond, oh, it's Bianca's fault, you know. She's this like young hot girl, like coming to, you know, tempt like poor sweet Eric, who's just trying to work as a minister. So I wanted to show Bianca's journey, but also exactly like you were saying, that there are some people, some women who, instead of looking towards the men, they do tend to look at other women and they want to ask, okay, you know, instead of saying, why was this man terrible? They ask, well, why wasn't that woman perfect? You know? And
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah, because I find that strange when people go, and about that's something I've always found strange, which a lot of people go, but Louisa, you should understand, men are like that. And I go, if men are like that, like you say, then they should treat every woman the same. But when you realize that men treat women differently, a man might be with a woman and take the piss. He doesn't care, and then when he's before another woman or with another woman, he shakes at her presence and he behaves himself. He puts himself in check. I remember on, that was it last month, on Instagram, a lady had put up a video that she said she went on holiday with the kids, and by the time she came back, she met a woman in the house with her husband, a side chick. And then she runs after, she follows a Nigerian woman. She follows this side chick down the road and then picks up her phone and starts to make a video of the side chick. What are you doing in my house? So husband snatcher, blah, blah, blah. And then people started to comment. So I hardly ever comment on social media unless it's something that touches me and so. But I went down there and I wrote that, when will this stop? When will we women stop fighting each other? Personally, I'm not saying what this lady did is right, but remember, she didn't come into your house uninvited. So I feel that your husband who made vows with you is who you should be facing. You are lucky this side chick is a calm one and doesn't have a bad temper. You can imagine if she had decided to fight you and beat you up, then you'll be embarrassed. And then you go back to that cheating man. And then somebody responds to me and says, it's clear you are a side chick. And that is why, yes, said to me, it's clear you are a side chick. And that is why you are making this kind of comment. After all, if you meet a thief in your house, wouldn't you attack the thief? And then I wrote back and I said, dear commenter, because I went and I looked at her page and I'm like, no need to waste my energy. And I said, dear commenter, I won't disrespect you as you disrespected me by insinuating that you are a side chick, but go back and read my comment. I didn't say what she did was right. All I said was she was invited to this house. Remember, she's a side chick and she has her hustle. Trust me, that man might not be her only sugar daddy. And no matter what you do to her, your husband is going to meet her again at a different location. So I feel that your husband is the person you have a business with. Because what if you go there, fight, and you get injured? It doesn't make any sense. So when will we women stop fighting each other? Or because, you fight, you go back. Yeah, it makes no sense.
And stop demonizing somebody for, I think that sometimes somebody makes a mistake and it's almost like you take away all their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So because somebody's a side chick, they're not, they're not seen as a complete person. They're just a horrible person, and they've done something wrong and they should be punished. I think that Bianca, she's Eric's side chick, right? In Trinidad and Tobago, people would say the corner woman, the outside woman, but it's what led her to want that relationship and to think that, oh, Eric will leave his wife for me. Like, this is something, this isn't just, and I think that was a giving humanity to somebody who sometimes we can just look at that person and exactly like what you said, you just think, okay, I'm just going to dismiss this person completely because they're a side chick, and that means that they're a bad person in every single way.
Yeah. And then I want to go to Obadiah. Okay, so the thing with Obadiah for me here was when they masquerading, the person behind the mask, when they say fake it till you make it. And with Obadiah, initially, I started out really angry, and then I found him humorous. And I'm very happy that you didn't give too much details about his romance with Bianca. Yeah, because I was like, no. I don't want to read anything about two of them doing anything. No, I don't like him. So I don't want to think of him doing anything romantic with Bianca. I don't want to. And I liked how the way you touched on the romance in a very subtle manner. But Obadiah, for me, I feel, so for me, growing up as a privileged child, Obadiah reminds me of some kind of children I grew up around, assuming that, who make this assumption that, oh, because you come from a privileged background, you don't have any problems. That's how I saw it. So I took it personal because I'm like, yeah, it's this same thing where they feel that, oh, because your dad is this, your mom is this, you guys don't have any problem. We are the poor ones. We grew up in the projects. We had no running water. But there were days we too didn't have running water. It's just that our own experience of not having running water is, my dad would say, call somebody and say, go to the water board, get a tanker, provide water and give everybody in the area water. Yeah, but again, sometimes they say you have no power or control over where you come from, but you have control over where you are going. Yeah, so that was how I saw Obadiah. And what was it with this mask? What was it? What was his story? Because I read about, when I was reading, I actually felt bad when he got attacked by the criminal, because it's like saying, it's like a food chain. There are those at the top, there are those at the top of the food chain, and even those at the bottom of the food chain still have others at the bottom of the food chain that's below them. So it's like having the ocean, and you have humans are killing whales, and then you have whales attacking the smaller fish. It's like a Disney movie where this prawn says, I'm going to get to the top of the food chain. And then they show him in the midst of a billion other prawns, and we didn't know who he was. Yeah. So talk to us about classism in Trinidad.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the way that it resonated personally with you, I hope that it resonates with a lot of people because everybody has some experience of class disparity. What side you are on in that experience, whether you're one of the haves or the have-nots, so it may be depending on your situation. In some instances, you're a have, in some instances, you're a have-not. You know, a lot of us, all of us, have probably had experience with classism. And I think that you summed up Obadiah perfectly. He recognizes that he is from a part of Trinidad that, first of all, he can't even say where he's from in his resume. People don't want to hire you because they're just like, I'm not hiring anyone from there.
Yeah.
You know, he suffers from things that other people wouldn't because of where he was born. So there's the scene where he leaves his home and he drives into Port of Spain, which is the capital, and you can see, the sort of like broken, the galvanized that people are using for their fences, the kind of skinny chickens that they're raising to have something to eat, the crime, it's an area where there are regular shootings, and then, and he lives right opposite the dump, which is, and I mean, they still do it. They just burn garbage. And if you're driving past there when they're burning the garbage, it is disgusting. You can roll up your windows, you can put on your AC, you're still going to smell it. And he leaves where he lives, he gets into Port of Spain, and he sees exactly how the other half lives. And he does have this huge chip on his shoulder, this feeling that, if he had just been born differently in a different situation, everything would be different. And I think that he has a point, but at the same time, his understanding in the beginning of the book is much too simplistic. He sees Bianca, he says, okay, she's Dominic Chankett's daughter, and he thinks that he knows everything about her. He thinks that he knows, who she is, that she doesn't have any real problems, because to his mind, how could she have any real problems? And I think that part of the book is about him understanding that she's not this privileged rich girl who's never gone through anything. And part of the book is Bianca understanding that she has privileges and access to things that people like Obadiah or like Obadiah's sister will never have. So when she decides to confront Eric at the end of the book, it's because she now has this awareness of, well, I'm one of the few people, or maybe only person, who can do this, because other people, like Obadiah's sister, she could never confront Eric in the same way. She has no way to threaten Eric. So I think it is about people who are on the surface in two different classes, and who both of them have to recognize, I didn't really see you properly. I didn't really understand you. I went with the stereotypes of who I think that you are. And then you asked a great question about Obadiah and the masking. I think that it's very interesting if you ever pay attention to how different people are treated in roughly the same situation. And Dante, he tells a story very early on about not getting served in a restaurant. He just went in, he wasn't served. It was obvious they didn't want him and his family there. And, there were waiters, they served other people. And Obadiah and Dante, that is the world that they grew up in. This world where they often feel people don't want them there, they're condescended to, they are, ignored. And Obadiah, he has big dreams and he has a lot of pride. And part of what he wants is this sense of, I will make these people, I will make them think that I'm somebody. He envisages, when he talks in that robbery scene that you talked about, when he's imagining his store, which doesn't exist yet, but he's imagining it. He's like, well, it's like a giant middle finger to every boss who said they wouldn't hire some boy from the B-thumb. It's so much of that. It's so familiar to us. So many of us have had this moment where we've like, I'll show you, anytime we feel underestimated. But I think the problem is that Obadiah's vision of how to be a successful makeup artist, that is very skewed. His idea is this really kind of toxic idea of this sort of like arrogant figure who's cruel to other people. He's cruel to Bianca at that tea when she throws the tea in his face. You know, it's this idea of somebody who needs to get respect by being fair, by putting other people down, by being this sort of diva. And I think that part of that, the book is him discovering, yeah, what are the real life effects of this? You don't exist in a vacuum. Okay, you meet Bianca and you insinuate that she's too fat and that she needs to lose weight. You know, what is the effects of that fat shaming, of that, cruelty? What's the real life effects of that on her? And when he sees things like Bianca restricting her eating and he thinks about what he says, I think that part of it is him realizing that, yeah, you may choose to wear this mask because you think you have to get ahead, but is this the person that you want to be? Is this a price that you're willing to pay to be successful? And is there another way that you can be successful? Your only options aren't be a terrible man and succeed and be a good man and fail. But I think that it's a lot of learning for him. And I know that you said you hated him at the beginning. I think that he has been the most polarizing character. There are some people who have come to me and they have said, Obadiah is my favorite. I loved him from the beginning. And I've been shocked. I've said from the beginning. And there are some people who have come to me and said, even by the end, I still was just a little angry with him for what he did. So I love hearing the reactions.
Yes, because I look at it and I go, okay, you have already condemned, you had condemned Bianca before you even met her. Okay, rich kid, then she makes it, to add, like Nigerians would say, to add insult to injury, you went ahead and dated someone's husband, and then you live in this highbrow area, and then, okay, fine, even when she says she pays rent, it's like, but you're a rich kid. And then now you want to use her?
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw a lot of that in school. When I went to primary and high school, I went to school with people of about the same class. But when I went to uni, that was the first time in my life I was meeting people who were struggling. And by struggling, I mean people who were training themselves, seeing themselves through school. And I started to understand how people latch on to people, because I had people who latched on to me, latch on to people just to get ahead. Yeah, just to get ahead in life. And coming to think of it, I wouldn't judge them because, sometimes circumstances bring about certain things. But it takes me to Bianca's mom, who you married up. Like they would say, it's always better. Someone had told me back when I was growing up that as a woman, it's better, it's easier, if you can't marry someone at your level, it's usually better for you to marry up, because it's easier for a man to bring a woman up to his level. But as a woman, never marry down, because it's a man's ego many times can't manage it. And just this morning, I saw a story like that, where this woman married a guy, she was the one providing, and the day she bought a car, that was when problems started in the family. Yes. So they talk about that. So talk to us about Bianca's mom, because I think of Bianca's mom and why was it that she and her father never really sat down to talk about it, the grief and, all of that. Talk to us about her mom. Yeah, because that was something I was going to ask. I found very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. So Bianca's mom, I think she is somebody who Bianca really idealizes. And at the beginning of the book, Bianca, she wants to write the story of her mom's life because she thinks that is the best way to honor her mother.
Okay.
And it's also a way for Bianca to sort of reach out to who she thinks is the only good parent she has. Dominic, her father, seemed to not really be able to process the grief of his wife dying. And also seemed, after his wife died, to be a pretty terrible parent to Bianca. I think she says at one point, he outsourced her care. He was able to, get a driver to pick her up. There was a helper at home to sort of look in to see that she's doing her homework. So Dominic, he is this, like, I think in the Caribbean and maybe, you know, if there's so many similarities, it might be the same in other African countries too. You can tell me. But Dominic, he has this sort of very silent type of masculinity. He's not this talker. He's not gonna sit down and say, "How are you feeling? How are you doing? Like, how's everything going?" You know, and even after Bianca's scandal with Eric, he starts coming to check up on her more. He comes and he brings muffins or fruit or something like that. But he doesn't push it. He doesn't actually ask her, how, you know, tell me what happened with Eric. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
You know, he's very distant. And I think that in the book there are different types of Caribbean masculinity, but a lot of them draw from the same kind of belief that a man is one particular type of person. Probably the person who fights against that the most is Dante, but you know, Obadiah, Eric, Dominic, a lot of them have this idea of masculinity. And it's only when Bianca asks her dad if he would let her interview him. And originally, she doesn't ask because she cares particularly. She just thinks it could be good for the magazine more than anything. That she realizes how little she knows about him. And really, she's writing this book about her mom. She doesn't really know much about her dad at all. And as he's telling her the story of, you know, how he grew up, then she starts to see, okay, his father raised him in a particular way. His father could have afforded to send him very easily to university, and Dominic would have never had to pay for anything, but his father didn't. His father's like, you need to work for what you get. And so Dominic then has that idea as a father. And I think that you can see that a lot of times with parents, like they raise you many times how they were raised. So if their parents did something, they think they should do it too. And Bianca really, from that conversation she has with him, that's the first time that she starts to think, okay, you know, it's not that he didn't care. It's just that he was just repeating, regurgitating the way that he was raised. And I think that, or I hope that it's not that they have a perfect relationship by the end of the book. It's still a lot of complexities around it. But Bianca, she's able to understand him more. And I think he is able to understand her more in that conversation as well. I mean, it's from her perspective. So really, you know, we wouldn't get any big revelations for him. But I think that he is able to understand better how to navigate their relationship. And I hope that it's this thing with family. Family is so messy, um, chaotic. Sometimes you're related to somebody and they just make you want to like bang your head into a wall. You just think, how could this, you know, why is this happening? But then at the end of the day, you know, it may be that same person. Your family may come through for you in the most unexpected, unusual ways. And I hope that that's what happens with them in the end.
Yeah, very, very true. Let me see the time. Does anybody have any more questions for Breanne? We have Breanne here. Does anybody have any more questions for Breanne? Well, okay, nobody has. Well, Breanne, before I let you...
I do.
Okay, Miss Hamelin, go ahead.
Well, in terms of Trinidad, and you speak about, you know, advancing and raising awareness, like how are things progressing politically in the context of what you draw upon?
That's a great question. I think that politically things feel quite stagnant. So there are two dominant political parties in Trinidad, but those parties are organized very much along race. So there's one party that is understood to be the Black Party and one party that is understood to be the Indian Party. And sometimes the sort of racism is very naked. A few years ago, there was an election in Tobago, and one of the people who was trying to get elected said, "Oh, you can't vote for the UNC, that's the Indian Party, because I hear that if they win, there's a boatload of Indians going to come to Tobago and they're going to overpower us." And everybody was, you know, a lot of people were like, did he just say that? Like, he actually said those words? And so I think that politically there's still, you know, an us against them mentality. And for a lot of people, they might not feel like they have options. So there have been movements in Trinidad, for example, for people to say, go to vote, but spoil your ballot. Like, don't vote for anybody. And that gained traction with some people just feeling like, well, there's nobody that I want to vote for. You know, there are two parties, two dominant parties, and they, you know, the policies don't seem that different. They just seem to be, you vote here if you're Black and you vote here if you're Indian. And so politically it's a little bit frustrating in Trinidad, but I think that there are people, maybe not working through politics, but there are people working through NGOs, there through the creative arts, through businesses who are making really positive changes in the community. So I think that it's not necessarily that they're not positive changes. There's a lot, but they're not coming from the politicians. They're coming from the people who are kind of dragging the politicians their way, almost. And there actually is a David Rudder Calypso. He's a sort of famous Trinidadian, well, famous within Trinidad, Calypsonian, and he sings about being a country where the people are often ahead of the politicians. So it's something where people, it's very rare for a politician to say, you know, this needs to change. There needs to get a certain critical mass of people who want it to happen. And in some instances, there have been people who have literally sued the government and won to change laws that existed since we were a colony. And they said, well, this shouldn't exist anymore, and they'll sue, you know, they sued and they won. But it's very much sort of like the people dragging the politicians forward, if they can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And in terms of the violence, because I've never been to Trinidad, my mom and my siblings went, but it's always sounds scary. Is it as scary as it's like shown out in the media, or is it not as bad?
I think it is. I mean, Trinidad has per capita the sixth highest crime rate in the world, And I think that it is something that I touched on in the book as well, because it's a life where if there's a strange car outside your house, you're gonna lock all your doors, pull your windows, like look out the window, like who is it? Why are they here? How long are they there? When are they leaving? Let me take a picture. Let me write down their license plate. And this feeling of never being safe, I mean, that's something that, you know, Bianca and Obadiah both experience in different ways. They're both victims of crimes. There are times when both of them hear gunshots in the street, they don't go out. But that is something that is the reality for many of us, I think. Where you know, I remember I used to live not too far from where Bianca lives. And, you know, somebody would get shot and they come out and they just throw a white cloth over the person. And you were just supposed to go about your day. So yeah, I do think that it's something that is, the crime situation is very serious. It has changed a lot. Like, my parents did not grow up like I grew up. They grew up, you know, walking home from school, that type of stuff. So it's something that's happened in the last maybe like 20, 30 years in some parts, but I would say that it's a concern that everybody who I talk to who wants to leave Trinidad, crime is a big thing. They're just like, I don't feel safe here. Yesterday I met a bookseller to sign some books, and she told me she might be migrating, and she said crime. She's like, I can't live like this anymore. So I do think that it is, unfortunately, serious.
So what is the cause of the crime?
Thank you so much.
Is it the high rate of poverty? Is that the cause of the crime? Because we have crime in Nigeria, but it's not. Yes, there's crime, but not the way you are talking about it. Maybe because it's such a small country.
I think part of it is poverty and the lack of opportunities. And then I think that part of it is the drug trade. So Trinidad, we're just off the coast of Venezuela. We have very porous borders. We're an island. So we have a lot of drugs that come through Trinidad en route to North America, etc. And so I think it's those two things. I have been in a program, I think it was called Safe Community TT, and it was about you know, trying to make Trinidad a safer place. And when you hear the stories of people who maybe were in prison or who at one point or another turned to crime, sometimes there are people who grew up in very poor communities where there is no outreach from the government. And so the person who really helps the community might be the sort of euphemism is community leader, but might be a gangster basically who runs that community. And so they grow up and that's the authority figure they know. They feel failed by the government, failed by the police. And so I think that, yeah, that the sort of maybe the social situation and then the drug trade, I mean, coming through just makes everything worse. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me look at the time. I wish we had more time. But I just want to say, Breanne, thank you so much for putting this amazing book. For people, please, we need to take our group photo. So if you have your book, can you hold it up? Let me see. I know Lala is at work, but yes, please, who has their book so we can hold it up and take our group photo? I should have done that at the beginning. I always forget. I should have done that at the beginning when you joined us. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Lydie, are you there? Janet? Oh, somebody
I don't have the book. I got it from the library.
Okay, from the library. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just
I
gonna.
don't have the book either.
Okay, that's fine.
I have the book, but I'm driving. But you can use my face.
Okay, so turn on your camera. I know you're driving. Okay, turn on your camera then. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I just want to say a very big thank you, Breanne, for writing this amazing book. I'm going to share. I think someone had asked for you to share your handles, and I said I'm going to share it. Yeah, so that they can follow you for your upcoming work. I think for me, the scene that really got me here was when she was going to have the final conversation with Eric, and she spent her time on her makeup, and I'm like, do you need all this makeup just to go talk to this stupid man? But like in Nigeria, people say, dress the way you would like to be addressed. Which, I mean, that
the makeup was a mask, Louisa. Yeah. It was a mask.
Yeah, exactly. It was a mask. Like we've been talking about masks
to hide the anxiety,
yeah.
It was a mask.
Yeah, because I was thinking, why all this makeup for this stupid man? What is going on? Okay. Yeah, but all the same, I would like to say a very,
Louisa, I just want to add something quick.
Yes,
please. Thank you for your book. I will post it on Instagram and tag you. So your book followed me to Costa Rica, to Belgium, and to Zurich, my companion for my trip. So thank you for it was a good, easy read and very relatable. The makeup, the cheating, the men, the scandal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to hear more from you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, Lydie, we all want to be like Lydie when we grow up. She's always at some fancy location reading her book. Like she was reading this book, like sending me pictures from like 3 different countries, and I'm like, So we all want to be like you when we grow up.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Breanne, thank you so much for this amazing book. We are looking forward to your other works. And thank you so much to Emily Fisher. Yes, Emily, I think I've been back and forth with her, with you and another author who I think she manages also. So please, a very big thank you to Emily too. We really, really appreciate this. Thank you for making our time to join the Ottawa Black Book Club. This is our 4th year, actually. So our 4th anniversary is
Congratulations.
Yes, thank
Happy anniversary. And thank
Yes,
you
so it's
so
actually-
much for having me. And thank you to everyone for reading this book. I
Thank you
really
more. Thank you more for joining us. So do have a great Saturday.
see you to you.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.